If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we continue to unravel the mysteries behind the origins, motives, and cultures of the 8 ghostly legions in the world of darkness. This episode will focus on the victims of suicide that make up the Silent Legion. This was never going to be an easy discussion explored, but one must challenge it if we are to fully appreciate the quiet, the ones that make up the Silent Legion. Suicide is much more difficult for an outsider to process because they, the deceased, chose their time and method of dying. To say they were unhappy is a huge understatement, but their sudden departure and the questions often left unanswered brings intense levels of grief unlike anything else. As someone who has been on both sides of this sort of experience, I know far more than most of what it feels to ultimately fail someone and myself. But this isn't about me or my hollow victories, but the unfortunate souls that sought to end one's torment and awoke to another. As with all of our conversations, I do appreciate the need to take a moment's breath and come back when you're ready, as there is plenty of knowledge we have collected that might make your skin crawl. Now, if you're ready, let us talk about the Silent Legion and their quiet lord. It may come as no surprise to you that many who commit suicide do not become a wraith. Their emotions and willpower to pass on, or to live as one might say, is simply not strong enough. Those that do become wraiths are simply more connected to the skinlands than they wanted to be, for their fetters are places, people and items that cause them turmoil in life. A bully at work, a rapist at home, a university lecturer, an unforgiving mother, just to name 4, technically 8 examples for you. It is not uncommon to find wraiths in the Legion with at least one resolved fetter. For many Silent Legionnaires, seeking closure is in the Shadowlands is often far too difficult and actively seek new suicide methods. These wraiths are called jumpers, and the most common method we have ascertained is through the headfirst diving into a nihil, which, as a reminder, is a portal that connects a specific location to the Tempest or Labyrinth. I'm sure you don't need to be reminded how this is practically suicide. We also know that spectres formed this way are a tad more cunning than others, and are thus, spectres as a whole are hated by the Silent Legion more than others, according to them at least. Anywho, those who haven't worked out the Shadowlands and its rules are called wrist-slitters, and as you can imagine, it is a derogatory term we at the Phoenix Institute don't like exercising that much. There are those that assist those in the skinlands of their suicide, nudging them in that direction. It is referred to as shadow nudging because of the fact it is a pretty easy way for the shadow to gain angst. It, of course, is a pretty big violation of the dictum mortem. As all of these 3 involve some method of feeding oblivion, some found that willingly being melted down into soul steel for lack of any concern for how their corpus is used. These sort of individuals are known as steel martyrs. As bleak all of this is, not everyone in the Silent Legion died of their own hand. For example, terminally ill patients who agree to turn off their life support surrounded by loved ones, or soldiers that die of starvation through hunger strike, brothers and sisters in arms. A significant minority goes to the Penitent Legion instead. Outside of her own legion, the Silent Legion is her personal favourite, declaring there both should be one legion, as we touched upon a couple of sessions ago. On the topic of legions, the Silent Legion is the smallest of the legions, alongside of the Legion of Fate. They, similar to the Legion of Fate, do not tackle their political manoeuvres with sheer aggression, but with subtlety and precision. These 2 legions share similar ties regarding fate, but there has been a running joke about who chooses fate, and I won't get into that for now. The Silent Legion considers the Legion of Paupers and the Emerald Legion as their closest allies. The race of these legions are perhaps the 2 types most in need of counselling services of the quiet, who offer their services gladly. Such neutrality can almost be extended to the Iron and Skeletal Legions, but we understand things are a little tense, as these legions blame the Silent Legion for the increased attentions towards right to die movements that took place in the Americas and Europe. However, We are aware that the Silent Legion are the largest violators of the dictum mortem, but we understand this is because they are said to be the largest suicide prevention network on the planet, which is also why it is the smallest legion. Why do they do this? Well, it is argued that the Silent Legion, that these quick could easily become an agent of oblivion and would be better off dying later when less angst is in their soul. However, we know of the shadow nudging that happens mainly by the Silent Legion's Reapers. The Quiet Lord does not do much on this, much to the dismay of the other Death Lords. To that end, the Smiling Lord of the Grim Legion argues that ending one's life is really a form of violence against oneself, and suicide should really be in his charge. The Quiet Lord is not fond of him, as well as the Laughing Lady, and thus there is some rivalry between the Penitent, Grim, and Silent Legions. The other legions have kept these three from gaining ground over the other in this argument. Thus, the Silent Legion continues to exist as an entity by itself, rather than incorporated into one of the larger legions. Now, this obviously benefits the Quiet Lord most of all, but you may be asking at this point, what do we actually know about him? Well, to tell you the truth, not a lot, which is frustratingly fitting, given the Death Lord's title. We know he is in fact a he, and he is the most secretive of the Death Lords. What information we have on him can be traced back to the Fourth Great Maelstrom during the Great War. We believe he is a stoic, reserved figure who does not reveal his emotions. Rumours speculate that he is to be some redeemed spectre, which certainly spices up the political climate somewhat, doesn't it? You have probably gathered that he is perhaps the least ambitious of the Death Lords. He seeks only to maintain his position, with little concern in becoming the foremost power in Stygia. Many consider the Death Lord most concerned with the well-being of the wraiths underneath him, though his legion has an understandably large suicide rate. The high numbers of wraiths who survive their first few weeks may be considered a testimony to his policies. He was the only Death Lord opposed to the breaking of the guilds, possibly because of his and the Silent Legion's close relationship with the Pardoners Guild and the Monitors Guild. Some Quiet are actually members of both, though this fact is unknown to many outside of the Legion. We also know that he and the Legion see heretics as misguided fools that are ultimately harmless to anyone other than themselves. As discussed before, the Quiet Lord and the Seat of Silence are located in Newtown. It is a silent, foggy district, allowing those to remorse, as this legion homes those that have died of suicide, despair, martyrdom, and other forms of self-destruction. The Seat of Silence is said to reflect the beautiful gloom of daybreak in a cemetery on a rainy morning in late fall. A very specific description may be, but remember the romantic goth vibes in the Underworld Explorer. Anyway, ornate arabesque spires rise above the Stygian skyline around them, bent over as if weeping for those within. Within the quiet halls themselves, you can hear sobs and wails all around, which isn't that much of a surprise really, given who and what is inside. These expressions vanish down long hallways and absorb the sound so they can never, ever echo back. Specially trained members of the Pardoners Guild attempt to help them through the grief and come to terms with their condition. Many within the Legion lean towards the usage of Castigate, which, as a reminder, is the Arcanos that controls or tames the Shadow. It is said that about 60% of Stygian Pardoners and 40% of Monitors are members of the Silent Legion. I suppose this leads us to talk about the Legion as a whole, and there is quite a bit for me to waffle about. With regards to day-to-day activities of civilians, there is no real sharing of overwhelming focus to activities. Some organisation is needed, but positions in the back office go to wraiths who actually crave sameness. Many seek more active roles, often tasked with a bit more than they can manage, while some pursue the roles of mystics and counsellors. This is a deliberate decision to keep the Silent Legionnaires too busy to backslide into introspection and regret. It doesn't always work, of course, but I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that. With exception to the Emerald Legion, there are more teenage wraiths here than any other legion, which, on a very morbid note, makes the Silent Legion one of the more current legions, for lack of a better phrase. Many Silent Legions are usually more outgoing and social than most other wraiths in the hierarchy. These are obviously the ones that have managed to overcome their turmoils. Another goal is the parting of way of fetters, which we touched upon earlier tonight, and many of the Quiet are willing to help, acting as one large support group for each other, which can include the joining of the aforementioned guilds. We also mentioned them being large violators of the dictum mortem, and many break it just to apologise to loved ones. As for the main legions, the armies, matters are significantly different, given they are the smallest of the legions and cannot build massive armies like the Smiling Lord might. The Quiet Lord has been known to hire other soldiers from other legions and dark kingdoms for sparing no expenses with his troops. This is particularly potent when it comes to hiring instructors, nor does it help that there is an animosity between the Silent Legion and the Artificers Guild, meaning the Legion does not get that many soul steel weapons. Silent Legion units are built on circles of 5 wraiths rather than the usual 10. Individual combat training is focused on speed and brutality, with the goal to cause as much damage as possible, taking them out and moving on to the next foe. They are known to take on more defensive stances too, usually protecting the hills from invading spectres. Silent Legion military police do not use as much extensive force as the other legions and, like the rest of the legions, are more lenient with breaches of hierarchy policies. Much like the other legions, the Silent Legion has its own special divisions that follow different roles in the army. Warriors of Leaf, occasionally known as Rushers of Leaf, are described as shock troopers of the Silent Legion, soldiers that are akin to the kamikaze pilots of World War II. However, such observations are made by lesser ghost hunters, for this is quite a bit of nuance. The Warriors of Leaf join military service to find peace and oblivion in combat, but not before taking a piece of it with them. While many members rarely survive a second battle, the devastation they cause is truly something, making them one of the most effective groups of fighters in the Shadowlands. Those who wish to be forgotten can be found here. The band of Quixote or Quixoteans, also called Mitties, believe that wraithly existence has left them unfilled. They seek adventure and death that they did not have in life, and are found mostly in the civilian sectors consisting of members throughout all the legions. Our findings tell us that they generally wear a red and brown ribbon somewhere on their person, to let others know who and what they are. Angels of Angst are composed of wraiths who committed suicide as teenagers or young adults, the oldest being of 23 years of age. These Quiet are less a formal group and more a label. Most Silent Legion members grow out of this group as they begin contributing more to wraithly society. The Black Legion are the Silent Legion of Russia and Eastern Europe. This division of the Quiet is one of the most powerful forces in the region. Finally, we have the 10,000, ruled by a notable wraith by the name of Xenophon, who we have to talk about sometime. Anyway, the 10,000 are an all-volunteer organisation that served and died in foreign lands, bereft of any hope of ever seeing their homes again. Despite their name, they never numbered more than a few hundred at any time. Because of their experience in fighting in life, they are one of the most respected divisions of Stygian army in death. But it doesn't come across most of the time. Those whose mental and emotional well-beings tease the void put up black sludgy walls, and no amount of praise or admiration will ever penetrate them. Sometimes little bits of light poke through and there are little ups, but it rarely lasts. Someone who's quick to patch up those holes, and it is usually the depressed themselves. No one who kills themselves is truly happy with life. Very few within the Legion do not feel totally despised of their entire existence, which is why, for some, a total end to it all seems like the best choice to make. Such nihilism leaves marks on people, radiating an aura of hopelessness, making them feel ostracized and isolated, even if they have a large bubbling friend circle who loves and adores them. It is very difficult for said emotions to come out and felt heard and listened to. So promise me, dear explorer, if you know anyone down in the dumps or has mental health issues, please check up on them. Without any prompt, and check up on them. Don't bombard them with silly memes or cat videos on the YouTubes, but give them your time and energy and show that you care. You may not be able to save them, you may only delay the inevitable, but let them know that someone cares. Do not leave them to the might of oblivion. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.